Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich im Namen der Friedrich-Naumann-Stiftung für die Freiheit und der Thomas-Tehler-Stiftung, dem liberalen Bildungswerk in Bayern. Heute sind wir hier zur letzten Veranstaltung der Reihe Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche. Die Reihe wird getragen von den beiden Stiftungen und folgenden Organisationen: dem Deutschen Bundeswehrverband, der Deutschen Atlantischen Gesellschaft, der Gesellschaft für Sicherheitspolitik, der Clausewitz-Gesellschaft, der Nürnberger Zeitung und der Landesgruppe Bayern des Reservistenverbandes. Heute sprechen wir über die Krise des Rechtsstaats in Polen und ihre Bedeutung für die Europäische Union. Als Mitwirkenden begrüße ich zuallererst Patryk Wojciech. Er ist Analyst der Rechtswissenschaften bei FOR, einer Organisation, eine Nichtregierungsorganisation in Polen. Hallo Patrick, glad to have you with us. Mit ihm spricht der Leiter der Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche, Ulrich Lechte. Die Einführung unseres Referenten übernimmt wie immer Professor Grein vom Reservistenverband. Die Veranstaltung wird in Englisch stattfinden, aber wir haben für Sie eine Übersetzung vorbereitet. Für die Übersetzung begrüße ich Britta Rousseau und Barbara Lerumbe. Unter unseren Gästen darf ich die Bundestagsabgeordnete Aydan Özgüz begrüßen und stellvertretend für alle Soldatinnen und Soldaten Brigadegeneral AD Gerhard Schulz. Nun zwei technische Hinweise. Wie schon gesagt, die Diskussion findet auf Englisch statt. Wir haben aber eine simultane Übersetzung für Sie vorbereitet. Sie sehen am Bildschirmrand eine Weltkugel. Dort können Sie dann die Sprache auswählen, sobald es auf Englisch begonnen hat, ob Sie die Originalsprache Englisch oder Deutsch hören wollen. Wie immer nehmen wir auch Ihre Fragen mit in die Diskussion. Sie können Ihre Fragen auf Deutsch stellen und wir übersetzen sie. Um Ihre Fragen einzureichen, nutzen Sie bitte wie immer das F&A, den F&A-Bereich. Sie finden ihn in der Menüleiste am Bildschirmrand. Jetzt übergebe ich an Professor Grein und wünsche Ihnen einen schönen Abend.
Ja, vielen Dank, meine sehr verehrten Damen, geehrte Herren, liebe Gäste. Auch ich darf Sie heute am letzten Abend unserer Veranstaltungssequenzen abermals ganz herzlich begrüßen und Ihnen zuerst den Referenten vorstellen, ehe ich noch ein paar einleitende Worte zum Thema finde. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear visitors, I'm very glad speaking this evening to your famous community. Once a time, we have a very competent expert from Poland. He's called Patryk Wojciech. I will present at first, second, tell you a little bit about the whole context, crisis in Poland and the importance for Europe, including a few bricks of defense policy. Welcome, Mr. Wojciech, and enjoy your stay with us. Der Referent des heutigen Abends ist juristischer Analyst beim Forum für zivilgesellschaftliche Entwicklung. Zuvor war er als parlamentarischer Berater im wissenschaftlichen Dienst des Unterhauses des polnischen Parlaments tätig, wo er die Abgeordneten und Gremien rechtlich unterstützte. Zu seinen Aufgaben gehörte die Beratung zu einer Reihe von rechtlichen und systemischen Themen, insbesondere die Analyse der Qualität von Gesetzesvorlagen und die Beratung des Petitionsausschusses. Dabei arbeitete er auch mit dem Europäischen Zentrum für parlamentarische Forschung und Dokumentation zusammen. Seit 2015 ist er Gründer und Geschäftsführer des Kadar-Instituts, einer Stiftung, die insbesondere die Transparenz der Regierung einfordern und verbessern sowie die Vereinfachung von Gesetzen unterstützen möchte. Sein Hauptinteresse gilt dem Verfassungs- und EU-Recht sowie der Transparenz von Regierungen. Herr Wojciech hat außerdem noch einen Abschluss im Bereich Europastudien der Universität Warschau. Das Thema des heutigen Abends lautet die Krise des Rechtsstaats in Polen und ihre Bedeutung für die Europäische Union. Die polnische Solidarność-Bewegung der 80er Jahre war nicht nur ein Wegbereiter der Demokratisierung und Liberalisierung Polens, sondern hat sie auch einen wesentlichen Beitrag zum Fall des Eisernen Vorhangs und damit zur Demokratisierung und Liberalisierung von ganz Mittel- und Osteuropa geleistet. Diese Entwicklungen mündeten schließlich 2004 im EU-Beitritt von Polen und 9 weiteren Staaten, der von tanzenden Menschen auf der Oderbrücke zwischen Frankfurt-Oder und Stubietle gefeiert wurde. Doch die aktuellen Entwicklungen sind eher ernüchternd und besorgniserregend. Der Umbau des polnischen Justizsystems untergräbt die Unabhängigkeit der Rechtsprechung und steht im Widerspruch zu europäischen Normen. Die Repolonisierung der Medien beschleunigt den Prozess der Verstaatlichung der polnischen Medien und die Einschränkung der Pressefreiheit im Land. Zudem werden regierungskritische Journalisten in Polen drangsaliert und viele Redaktionen befürchten, dass der Journalismus in Polen ähnlich wie in Ungarn seine Unabhängigkeit verliert. Ein Beispiel. Der teilstaatliche Mineralölkonzern Orlen im Dezember 2020 die Medienfirma Polska Press kaufte, war deshalb allen klar, dass dies kein rein wirtschaftliches Unterfangen darstellte. Vielmehr passten die 20 Regionalzeitungen und über 100 Wochenblätter, die allesamt zuvor der deutschen Verlagsgruppe aus Passau gehört haben, zur Strategie der Repolonisierung des Mediensektors. Gleichzeitig ist die Mineralölgruppe Orlen, deren Chef Daniel Objatek und Vertrauter von Kaczynski ist, für die Regierung ein Instrument, um die Medienbranche wirtschaftlich zu beeinflussen. Das hängt damit zusammen, dass das Unternehmen auch im Zeitungsvertrieb eine starke Stellung besitzt. Es betreibt nicht nur Tankstellen, an denen Zeitungen und Zeitschriften verkauft werden. Ihm gehört seit vergangenem November auch die Kioskkette Ruch. Selbstverständlich vermuten regierungskritische Zeitungen nun, sie würden im Vertrieb benachteiligt. Angesichts solcher Entwicklungen fürchten manche Beobachter, dass sich die Zustände in Polen jenen in Ungarn schleichend annähern, was objektiv gesehen aber so zu sein scheint. In Ungarn gehören viele ehemals private Zeitungen inzwischen einer staatsnahen Stiftung. Mit einer regierungskritischen Berichterstattung ist es nicht mehr weit her. Vor allem ausländische Kreise prophezeien, dass die Pressefreiheit auch in Polen immer mehr erodieren werde. Einheimische Journalisten sehen die Situation hingegen etwas differenzierter. Die polnische Gesellschaft ist nicht ganz so schwarz-weiß, wie die Regierung sie darstellte, sagt Łukasz Lipinski, stellvertretender Chefredakteur des Magazins Polityka. Denn im Land gäbe es eine recht gut funktionierende sowie vielfältige Zivilgesellschaft. Dazu passt, dass die Ausgrenzung von Minderheiten wie Lesben, Schwulen, Bisexuellen, trans- und intergeschlechtlichen Menschen von der Gesellschaft ausgegrenzt und in ihren Rechten beschnitten werden sollen. Gegen diese Entwicklung haben tausende Menschen in Polen auf der Straße demonstriert und die EU hat mit Vertragsverletzungsverfahren und der Schaffung eines neuen EU-Rechtsstaatsmechanismus reagiert. Auch will Polen Urteile des Europäischen Gerichtshofes offiziell nicht mehr als bindend akzeptieren. Das bedeutet quasi einen Ausstieg aus dem Rechtsgefüge der EU. Dies soll laut Ursula von der Leyen Konsequenzen haben. Und so radikal wie lange nicht baut die polnische Regierung auch das Justizsystem um. Kritische Stimmen werden ausgetauscht, unabhängige Institutionen abgeschafft. Zur Nürnberger Sicherheitstagung gehören selbstverständlich auch immer verteidigungspolitische Themen. Und lassen Sie mich zum Abschluss noch kurz ein paar ganz wenige streiflichtartig Revue passieren. Seit geraumer Zeit modernisieren US-Konzerne Polens Militär. Polen muss seine Streitkräfte modernisieren und setzt dabei auf milliardenschwere Rüstungsdeals. Experten kritisieren, dass Polen dabei vornehmlich auf die USA setzt und europäische Partner nicht berücksichtigt werden. Die größte Armee der NATO-Ostflanke stützt sich derzeit noch auf marode Technik aus Sowjetzeiten. Trainiert wird in veralteten Flugzeugen und Panzern. So sind zum Beispiel von 32 Kampfflugzeugen MiG-29, die über 30 Jahre alt sind, nur ein Drittel kampffähig. Und auch die Modernisierung alter Fahrzeuge wie gepanzerter Mannschaftstransportwagen reicht nicht aus. Es muss also neue Ausrüstung angeschafft werden. Zwar unterhält Polen neben den USA und der Türkei die drittgrößte Panzerarmee der NATO, wobei die Fahrzeuge jedoch ältere und modernisierte sind. 2018 hatte Polen für 4,75 Milliarden Dollar 2 Boden-Luft-Raketensysteme vom Typ Patriot, das größte Rüstungsgeschäft in der Geschichte des Landes, besiegelt. Zudem wurden 2019 20 mobile Raketenabschusssysteme vom Typ HIMARS im Wert von umgerechnet 365 Millionen Euro bestellt. Auch bahnt sich der Einkauf von 32 Mehrzweckkampfflugzeugen des Typs F-35 an. Deshalb fühlen sich amerikanische Rüstungskonzerne im Land, in Polen, wie zu Hause. Und die Polen hätten auch gerne mehr US-Soldaten im Land, so zum Beispiel eine ganz eigene US-Panzerdivision. Für erhebliche Unruhe sorgte vor nicht allzu langer Zeit denn auch eine Serie von Cyberangriffen sowie massive Desinformationskampagnen, die Polen im Rahmen der hybriden Kriegsführung Russlands zuwies. Betroffen waren hochrangige Politiker, Behörden und die Regierungspartei PiS. Die Attacken, so die Analytiker, seien vom Territorium der Russischen Föderation ausgegangen und die Täter von polnischen und verbündeten Geheimdiensten identifiziert worden. Ich bedanke mich abermals für Ihre geschätzte Aufmerksamkeit und übergebe an den Referenten des Abends. Vielen Dank.
So, Patrick, this is your turn.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for your kind introduction. Thanks to organizers for inviting me. Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche is an initiative concerned with security. So I will today try to tell you something about the legal security of us as European Union citizens, about the rule of law crisis in Poland. I will try to use as plain language as possible so as to explain some complex legal issues to everybody interested in this topic. I will now share my screen and show you the presentation. I think you can see it right now. So the topic of the presentation is why Poland's rule of law crisis is important for the whole Union. Again, my name is Patryk Wachowicz. I'm a legal analyst at the Civil Development Forum based in Warsaw. So my presentation will be divided into three parts. Firstly, I will tell you about the state of play, what led to the crisis in Poland. Secondly, how the European Union responses to this crisis, what tools are used, what has so far been achieved. And thirdly, why the rule of law crisis in Poland really matters to every citizen from the European Union. I have 30 minutes to discuss this topic, so I set up my stopwatch and try to be as concise as possible. So, Poland has substantially declined in many indexes related to human rights, rule of law, democracy, and the quality of governance. The attached chart is in Polish, but I think you can see I have collected something like 12 most notable indexes from around the world, something like economic freedom of the world from Fraser Institute, three indexes from Widem Institute, which annually assess the state of democracy in every country in the world, but also an index from, for example, Friedrich-Naumann Foundation, the Human Rights Index. And this is the position of Poland among EU member states, including the Great Britain, between 2010 and 2019. As we can see in many of these indexes, Poland has substantially deteriorated. For example, in the economic freedom of the world, most EU countries have been leading this index with all measures being at the very top. But since 2015, this line here at every chart is 2015, it has substantially deteriorated. Moreover, Poland has been recently regarded as the fastest autocratizing country worldwide since 2010, so even more than Hungary. And according to the Widem index, which I have mentioned, which is prepared by an institute from Scandinavia, Poland has, in 2020, Poland has dropped from liberal democracy to electoral democracy. So about the state of play, so what led to the crisis? I have identified three main issues, which I will cover now. The first is lack of effective constitutional review. The second is the lack of effective right to fair trial because of some clashes with the independence of the judiciary. And thirdly, I will present the government attempts to undermine the EU law. So about the first topic, since 2015, when the mentioned Law and Justice Party came to power, it has it has immediately decided to capture the Constitutional Tribunal. The previous parliament has elected 3 judges at the very end of their term, but the current president, Andrzej Duda, who was supported by the Law and Justice Party and won the election in 2015, simply refused to take oath from those judges. At the same time, the Law and Justice Party decided to appoint 3 own judges to the Constitutional Tribunal with an obvious breach of the Constitution, which then has been questioned both by the opposition and by other still independent bodies in Poland. Not long time later, the Constitutional Tribunal itself decided that these 3 judges are illegal. They cannot take up their position. They are not allowed to adjudicate because the previous parliamentary majority has already elected 3 lawful judges. However, the ruling majority, having changed the legislation concerning the Constitutional Tribunal about 6 or 7 times, has finally reached the stage when it has overwhelming majority in the Constitutional Tribunal. Since 2015, the Law and Justice Party has elected or will elect 14 out of 15 judges in the Constitutional Tribunal. So this casts doubts about the Constitutional Tribunal's independence. As it has been reported by the media, those 3 unlawful judges, but also other new lawful judges nominated by the ruling Law and Justice Party, have secretly met with prominent members of the Law and Justice Party in the party's premises. This was quite scandalous in Poland, and it really casts doubts as to the Constitutional Tribunal independence. And because of those 2 aspects, so the unlawful composition of the tribunal and questions about their independence, many other still independent bodies, such as the Commissioner for Human Rights, or the Ombudsman, such as the First President of the Supreme Court, such as the National Council of the Judiciary, which appoints judges, have decided to withdraw all applications from the Constitutional Tribunal because they are afraid that they cannot rely on effective and independent constitutional review. Since 2016, only ruling majority applies for constitutional review, not to solve some genuine constitutional problems, but to confirm or to use the term rubber stamp their previous or potential decisions concerning the governance. For example, they asked the Constitutional Tribunal to confirm that they can change the composition of the National Council of the Judiciary, a body which appoints judges, in order to politicize this body, in order to elect more members by the ruling majority rather than from judges themselves. Secondly, I have identified the right to fair trial problem. Really quickly after Law and Justice went to power, they've decided to merge the position of the Minister of Justice with the Prosecutor General. Now the minister, who is at the same time the leader of a party that forms the ruling coalition, can instruct subordinate prosecutors, and they can send them written instructions about how they should behave in court, which case must be, to which case they must make more attention, and so on. And recently, the Advocate General from the Court of Justice of the European Union said that this system is against the requirements of the rule of law. Secondly, we have politicized judicial appointments. As I mentioned, the ruling majority decided to change the manner of appointment of the members of the National Council of the Judiciary, which appoints judges. Previously, 20 out of 25 members, more than a half was appointed by judges themselves in elections, but now 23 out of 25 members of this body are appointed by political forces, mainly the parliament. And also, the Court of Justice has decided in 2019 that this system may not be in line with the rule of law requirements. And thirdly, the new disciplinary regime for judges, but also for prosecutors. The establishment of the new disciplinary chamber in the Supreme Court, which is filled by judges nominated by the new Council of the Judiciary, which I have said is hugely politicized, has created a very dangerous system for judges, because they can be punished for virtually every misbehavior the disciplinary officers deem that this is not in line with the new standards. For example, a judge has been suspended by the disciplinary chamber for applying EU law after one judgment from the Court of Justice of the European Union concerning Poland. He was for more than a year. He is suspended in his official duties and cannot adjudicate. On the other hand, there are disciplinary proceedings against judges who go to school teaching constitution, teaching about European Union values. On the other hand, the new legislation has introduced a prohibition for judges to question the legitimacy of judges appointed by the new National Council of the Judiciary. However, it is their task, their duty stemming from European Union law to check whether a body they are dealing with is in fact independent or is lawfully composed. And the third one are the attempts to undermine EU law. As I said, there are multiple disciplinary proceedings against judges for applying EU law, which is the very threat for the sound application of EU law in Poland, which is the requirement stemming from the treaties. Also, the bodies controlled by the ruling party, for example, the prosecutor office, sent political instructions to disapply EU law. We have cases concerning the European arrest warrant. There are many Polish people, there are many European arrest warrants sent to the Netherlands, sent to Germany, and the Prosecutor General instructed other prosecutors to question the legitimacy of Dutch courts, of German courts, because those countries as a whole have doubts about the independence of Polish judiciary. Similar applies to Spain, for example, also Ireland. And thirdly, and the most dangerous thing to me are the applications referred to the Constitutional Tribunal to declare fundamental principles of EU law unconstitutional. This is really weird, I must say, but this is the very first example since the beginning of the European project that government officials, I mean the Prime Minister, the Minister of Justice, the members of the parliament from the ruling majority apply to the Constitutional Tribunal directly to claiming that some provisions of EU law, such as the principle of primacy of EU law, such as the principle of effective judicial protection, which is as referred which is referred to by the treaties, are not in line with Polish constitution. So there is the way of thinking of the current government is that the standard, the European standard, on the standard or the Strasbourg standard concerning the human rights are generally incompatible with Polish constitution. I think this is not the case, because when we were negotiating our membership in the European Union, but also since May 2004, when we joined the European Union, I think everybody, including other member states, including European Union institutions, we all agreed that the standard of protection of human rights and the rule of law is the same. It seems that it is not. What is really important is that we will have at least 2 judgments concerning these cases. They could be decided next Tuesday and Wednesday. So this is really this will be really a hot week, I must say, for Poland's membership in the European Union. So to conclude this part, I will say that we have that since 2015 or 2016, Poland lacks effective constitutional review, has problems with effective judicial protection because of unlawful nomination of judges in Poland. There are sanctions for applying constitutional and European standards against judges and prosecutors, but also the captured bodies, so the new National Council of the Judiciary, the new First President of the Supreme Court, assist the government in undermining the rule of law. They openly and plainly declare that some provisions of the European Union law or some standards from the European Convention of Human Rights do not apply to Poland, which is very worrying. The second thing are the responses to the crisis from the European Union. Here I will present you 3 issues. Firstly, the proceedings before the Court of Justice, and then Article 7 procedure against Poland, and thirdly, the new conditionality mechanism linking the observance of the rule of law with EU funds. So when it comes to the proceedings before the Court of Justice, we have 2 types of these proceedings: infringement actions. So the European Commission brings a member state, here in Poland, to the Court of Justice, claiming that this country has violated EU law. And second are the requests for preliminary ruling. So Polish court, but also every court from a member state, can ask the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg for the interpretation of EU law. So since 2016, following the attempts to undermine the independence of the judiciary, the Commission has brought 4 cases against Poland. Firstly, concerning the lower retirement age for judges of ordinary courts and Supreme Court, which the Commission has won. The Court of Justice declared that Poland has violated EU law in this field. On 15 of July, so next week, we will have the 3rd really fundamental judgment concerning the disciplinary chamber. The European Commission claims that disciplinary chamber is not independent because it was composed of judges appointed by the new National Council of the Judiciary, which is hugely politicized. And thirdly, we have a new case now still pending before the Court of Justice concerning new disciplinary regime for judges. So those issues, the mentioned issues concerning the disciplinary sanction for questioning the independence of other courts, for applying EU law, and so on and so forth. But this case is at the early stage in the court in Luxembourg. And we have also more than 30 cases referred by Polish courts concerning various aspects of the rule of law and independence of, namely mostly the independence of the judiciary. We have received some judgments from the Court of Justice so far. They concern, for example, how to is a national court allowed to assess the independence of other court, which is now prohibited, as I mentioned, or can a national court be independent when the disciplinary regime against judges sitting in this court is so severe? So those are main issues already solved by the Court of Justice, but of course everything depends on the application of EU law in Poland, which is as I mentioned, which is really under threat. Secondly is the Article 7 TEU, so Treaty of the European Union procedure, which started in December 2017. So the Commission asked the Council, so the institution consisting of members of member states' governments, to declare that there is a clear risk of serious breach of the rule of law, concerning mainly the Constitutional Tribunal, which I said, the National Council of the Judiciary, the lack of effective judicial protection. So far, since January 2018, there have been 4 hearings. The last one took place quite a few weeks ago in early June. However, due to COVID-19 pandemics, it hasn't been organized for something like 18 months. We hope that the Council will organize more such hearings. However, after almost 4 years since this procedure has been started, there is no final conclusion. This is mainly because the different engagement of EU member states. Some member states are really pushing against Poland, trying to ask many questions as possible during the hearing. However, the rules how to conduct these proceedings are really not in favor of effective solutions, so to say. For example, at the beginning of every hearing, Poland has unlimited time to present its position. Recently, it has used more than an hour. Then each member state is allowed to ask 2 questions. For each question can be asked within 2 minutes. And then Poland, but also Hungary, which is the second country under this procedure, has 10 minutes to respond to every question. So this procedure is really not in favor of finding genuine sound solution. So this is a map in which Professor Laurent Pech and Dr. Joel Grogan from London have counted the number, the engagement of each member state during the hearing, Article 7 hearings against Poland. So until early July this year, some countries, including Germany, have asked questions at every hearing. Recently, also 10 member states have asked questions to Poland, including Germany on its own and on behalf of France. But as we can see, the engagement of each country varies a lot. And thirdly, the new conditionality mechanism, which links EU funds with the observance of the rule of law. This mechanism is in force since 1st January 2021. However, the European Commission, after the summit which took place in December 2020, decided not to apply the regulation from the very beginning, but to wait for the Court of Justice to decide the case, to decide the 2 applications brought by Poland and Hungary. Both countries claim that this new regulation violates the treaties because there is another mechanism for suspending EU funds, that namely the Article 7 procedure, which I have just mentioned. So the claim that there is no such conditionality mechanism in the treaties apart from Article 7. However, regardless the final judgment of the Court of Justice, which is expected to be held in early 2022, according to the regulation, it will be virtually impossible to apply against Poland, because the new regulation requires to set up a link between the breach of the rule of law in a member state and the sound administration of EU funds and possible threat to EU budget. According to Polish lawyers, according to Polish legal community, this is practically impossible to connect and to prove that, for example, issues within the constitutional tribunal, the lack of effective constitutional review, or problems with the appointments of judges, or threats to judges under the new disciplinary regime are connected with the sound administration of EU budget in a sufficiently direct way. At the same time, the new regulation says that the European Commission, which is in charge of applying this regulation, must determine whether other tools at the Commission's disposal can have better effect against the member states, such as infringement proceedings, which I have just mentioned. So it would be easier for the Commission to bring Poland again to the Court of Justice for violations of the EU law than to try to prove that the problems with, as I said, the Constitutional Tribunal or the Supreme Court or the National Council of the Judiciary present some threat to sound administration of EU budget. So in conclusion, I must say that European Union, especially the Commission, reacts in a too little, too late fashion. Some issues have not yet been addressed by the European Commission, including the Constitutional Tribunal, which will deliver its judgments about the constitutionality of the treaties in the coming days, but also the Council of the Judiciary and unlawful appointments of judges. And many viewers say that instead of creating new tools, the European Union, and in particular the European Commission, should use the existing ones. As I said, the infringement procedures. So bringing a member state before the Court of Justice is the most effective way. And however, the Commission is really reluctant to touch other other main issues which happened in Poland. So, and finally, why the rule of law crisis really matters. So, according to studies, according to very notable institutions such as the Venice Commission, which is a part of the Council of Europe, the rule of law is a prerequisite for human rights to be observed. You cannot have the right to fair trial, the right to protest, the property rights without a government that is adhered to the rule of law principles. There is also a really direct link between the democracy and the rule of law. In democratic countries, governments are accountable for their actions during their term of office. However, in electoral democracies or in illiberal democracies, as we sometimes call them, the ruling majority is directly involved into changing the way it is seen by the society, which has an impact on the outcome of elections, for example. So there are clear links between rule of law and human rights and democracy. Also, as you all probably know, there is a link between the rule of law and economic growth. It is proven that in countries which have a better position in rule of law indices, the expected economic growth is higher than in those with weak constraints on government. Moreover, this is also a question of successful EU integration. Every proposal, every initiative stemming from both member states and EU institution must be applied in the very same way across the European Union. So in the country such as Poland, where rule of law is under threat, there is a threat that every new tool, every new policy concerning, let's say, consumer protection, concerning family law, concerning trade agreement will not be observed. So the rule of law crisis in Poland is in fact a really a matter important, should be a matter important for every member state because of its impact on the whole European integration. And also the mutual trust between Poland and EU member states, especially Germany. Germany is our biggest economic partner. There are Polish-German families, there are Polish-German businesses. Similarly, in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in Ireland, there are many Poles, there are many Polish businesses, there are many Polish families. So there will be many, for example, judicial cases concerning both countries. The European arrest warrant, some family cases concerning, for example, child custody, cases between companies from Poland and other member states. So, in more general way, the mutual trust between member states is essential for the European Union to function, and this is why the rule of law crisis should really matter to them. And last but not least, something more short term, I must say. So the effective responses to COVID-19 pandemics. If a government imposes new restrictions without a proper legal basis, without the possibility for judicial review, without the need to observe the proportionality of the tools to prevent the spread. So there is a risk that later on, when for example, the new wave of COVID-19 pandemics come to Poland, there will be less and less responses from less observance from the Polish citizens, and we have such examples. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemics, the ruling majority decided to limit the right to organize public gatherings. They have closed many businesses without valid legislation. Now Polish courts have responding to those measures and essentially decide that most of them were illegal, and the government should compensate to the victims of those measures. So this is also a question of effective response to the pandemics. And lastly, I have a quote to you. A group of men are traveling together in a boat. Suddenly, one of them takes out a drill and starts to make a hole beneath himself. His companions remonstrate with him. "Why are you doing that?" they cry. "Why are you complaining about?" he says. "Am I not drilling the hole under my own seat?" "Yes," they reply, "but the water will come in and flood the boat for all of us." This is a quote from the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And I think this quote will conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward for all your questions and for the upcoming discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for your marvelous presentation today and your good structured lecture. I would like to at first say hello and greet my dear colleague, Alexander Müller, member of the German Bundestag. He is the chairman of our parliamentarian group in the Committee of Defense. So he is one expert when it comes to points of NATO for Poland and all that. And we already have questions for you, some, and so we start with a little starter. Anonymous asks, when did Poland's government really start to attack the rule of law? So when was the beginning point of all the attacks against the system?
So I think the very first point, of course, this was a process. It was spread in time. You really cannot indicate the precise the day when it started attacking the rule of law. But I think it all started in November 2015. It was something like 3 weeks since Law and Justice won the parliamentary elections. I was then an employee in the parliament. It was an evening, and suddenly, during the first sitting of the new term of Polish Parliament, the Law and Justice Party decided to elect 3 new members of the Constitutional Tribunal, despite other 3 were elected by the previous term of the Parliament. So I think this was the beginning of the crisis. But ultimately, when if you ask me about when the crisis began so serious that we can call it crisis, I think this would be late 2016, so 1 year later, when Law and Justice achieved effective control over the Constitutional Tribunal. They have changed the president of the tribunal. The new president, who is, by the way, the wife of the ambassador of Poland in Berlin, she decided to invite 3 unlawful judges to adjudicate in the Constitutional Tribunal, and this was the way. That was the moment that Law and Justice Party has gained effective control over the Constitutional Tribunal. So I think between late 2015 and late 2016. So this is my answer.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. The next question would be by Volker Ponneleit. He asks you, how far will the Polish government be going in not abiding to CJEU rulings?
Well, there is really interesting questions. I must say that normally each member state is required to adhere to judgments of the Court of Justice. This is a question of loyal cooperation between EU member states themselves and EU institutions and the member state. But also sometimes it happens that even the oldest members of the European Union do not stick to the judgments of the Court of Justice. However, Polish government decided to employ a different tactic, not to openly question the legitimacy of the Court of Justice, not to demonstrate that they will not comply with judgments from the Court of Justice, but they decided to undermine the Court of Justice itself, but bringing the provisions of the treaties before the Poland Constitutional Tribunal. So this is really worrying from the point of view of effective application of European Union law in the whole Union. But this is also an unprecedented event. As I said during my presentation, this is the very first time the government of a member state brings a case to the National Constitutional Tribunal, claiming that treaties are not constitutional, despite the very same government applies EU law in different areas, for example. And this application, which will be decided in a few days' time, concerns the very fundamental principles of European Union law: the primacy over national law and the effective judicial protection. Which safeguards the citizens' rights stemming from the European Union. But also, we have also some examples of non-compliance with EU judgments, ECJ judgments. Recently, there is also Poland is making history in the European Union, because recently we have the first time when the Czech Republic brought Poland to the Court of Justice for the Turów mine, which is a mine in southeast Poland, close to the German border as well, because of some environmental issues. And the Court of Justice decided temporarily to suspend the operation of this mine, but until now Poland has not complied with this judgment. So openly claiming that the ECJ has stepped outside its jurisdiction, and so on and so forth. So as I said, there are many ways in which Polish government does not comply with ECJ judgments, but this also depends on the decisiveness of the Commission, because when the European Commission establishes that a member state does not comply with the judgment, it can bring a case once again to the Court of Justice, claiming that the member state behaves not in line with the judgment, and then the Court of Justice is allowed to apply financial penalties against this country. However, so far the European Commission is reluctant in bringing Poland to the Court of Justice for non-compliance with its judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question by Anonymous. He's asking, the Polish government appears to be very effective to shut down independent judicial review, but do they have similar control over the rest of the country, or is it itself under political pressure? So talking about internal affairs or inner affairs of Poland. You all remember the presidential election, which was really a shortcut thing.
Yeah, there are. It's of course it's a more political question, but I will try to respond to this question as good as possible. Since last elections, the Law and Justice is formed by, in fact, by three parties: the Law and Justice itself, the Solidarna Polska, which is the Solidarity of Poland party, and the Porozumienie, the Agreement Party. Those are three parties that form the government, with some different views. For example, one junior coalition party, which is led by the current Minister of Justice, presents policies which are clearly illiberal. We can say that there are more authoritarian. By the way, on the other hand, the second junior coalition party has on its agenda more central liberal, conservative liberal proposals, such as the better business environment, such as less taxes, and so on and so forth. So naturally, there are clashes within the coalition. And recently, the Law and Justice presented a huge plan for the next coming years after the pandemics. Huge changes in the tax system, huge changes in building policies, for example, in childcare and so on. However, when junior coalition parties have looked into details, it seemed that it is unacceptable because it is not in line with values of one party and the second party as well. But they also openly claim as a whole that what is really important is that the opposition do not go to power because they will reverse all those changes that happened since 2015. For example, huge social benefits for families. For example, changes in the judicial system as well, because some citizens also support those changes in the Polish judiciary. And recently, it was announced that Law and Justice Party has lost 3 members. They have established a new initiative, and virtually it has lost a power in a majority in the Polish Parliament. However, I don't think that those MPs who left the Law and Justice will not support this party, at least its main programs. So this is how the Polish politics looks today. I think I responded to the question.
Yeah, thank you very much for your short overview. It wasn't a shortcut; it was a nearby thing at the end. It's 52 to 48 or something like that. It was not that clear, like Brexit. But at the end, that was the result of the last Polish election for the presidency. Our user or participant, Martina Bramswick, I don't know what the last name is. It's Tim ... here in my F&A module. She wants to come to the question of are there any updated statistics on corruption in Poland that indicates a correlation to the time the undermining of the justice system in Poland started?
Of course, there are statistics, mainly international statistics from Greco, for example, which is responsible for finding with corruption worldwide. But to the best of my knowledge, they do not confirm that the attacks on the judiciary resulted in more corruption in Poland. When you look at the statistics of how EU funds are spent, Poland is in the middle of the stage, I must say. Comparing to Hungary, when we have real problems with spending EU funds, in Poland there is no such threat. This is why, when I was describing the rule of law conditionality mechanism, it will be really difficult for the Commission to prove that there are problems with corruption, with unlawful spending of EU money, and changes in the Polish judiciary. We have more systemic problems concerning not only the corruption, but rather the powers that the government has over citizens. Is the government allowed to restrict human rights and freedoms during the pandemic, much more than the constitutional than the constitution allows the government to do so? For example, is the government or the ruling majority allowed to change the way how judges are elected in Poland, to gain control over the over the Supreme Court to establish new disciplinary regime for judges, and so on and so forth. This is less connected to the corruption rather than to gaining much more power over particular institutions, but also ultimately over citizens.
So Mrs. Bramswick also wants to challenge one of your previous answers to her questions, because you said you see the beginning of the process in Poland in 2015, and she thinks that it needed a more substantial preparation for the process, so that it should have started earlier out of her view. She says, takes the example of Brexit. The first time Brexit was discussed in conferences was 2012. It was followed by several close conferences and finally resulted in the referendum after 4 years. What has been the process in Poland before 2015 to get to that more conservative point of view against the liberal democracy that we used to have in the EU?
Of course, thank you for this question. During the previous government, more liberal comparing to the Law and Justice, there were indicators that showed that the trust in the judiciary is declining. Judges are really well-paid officers. However, they don't work as effective as possible. The length of proceedings has substantially increased. There was a problem with the language used by judges in the courtroom. Citizens did not understand whether they won the case or whether they lost the case, for example. And this was a frustration of some part of the society that the Law and Justice has used in the electoral campaign before in 2015, announcing that they will completely change the judiciary and how it operates in order to bring judiciary back to the citizens, to be closer to the citizens and so on. However, when it comes to what I was describing, the capture of the Constitutional Tribunal, I think because I was a direct witness of these processes in the Polish Parliament, I think they just spotted an occasion to capture the Constitutional Tribunal. The previous Parliament was allowed to elect 3 judges for the position of judges of the Constitutional Tribunal. But they elected 5 judges. So the Law and Justice, when it wasn't in power yet, referred this case to the Constitutional Tribunal, claiming that, well, the previous government elected too much, the previous Parliament elected too much judges. And after the Law and Justice went to power, it decided that yes, the previous government, the previous Parliament elected 5 judges. It was allowed to elect 3 judges. But at the same time, the Law and Justice took this occasion and annulled and voided the decision of the previous Parliament, and it also not only elected 3 judges for already occupied positions, it also elected other 2, which was allowed to do so. So I think that this wasn't a process. I didn't see any indicators of such process. Also, the results of the elections was really in favor of the Law and Justice Party, because should the left party gain something like 1 or 2% more, Law and Justice will not be able to form a government without searching for any other partner. So I think so this is how it started. I don't see, I cannot confirm that this was a process. This was a plot prepared before before the current majority went to power? I don't think so.
In between, I have to say a great thank you to all of the two of our translators, because there was already some reaction to your really brilliant translation that's obvious by one of the participants. And they thank you, and we all applaud to your good and well done translation right now. And we are going onwards with a question by Michael Laub. He's asking about your point of view, Patrick, what the EU has to do. What are the musts in the doing of the EU to force Poland to accept the contracts of the European Union?
Thank you.
May I interrupt? I had today one member of my party when we talked about Poland and the thing at the evening, the session of today. She said, "Well, the only thing they will understood is going to be take them all from the money transfers away." So that's one thing that's typical for Germans to think about money transfers. So, what's your point of view?
Of course, money matters, especially huge money from EU budget. Poland is not yet is still a largest receiver of EU funds. But as I said, there is in fact no effective tool to use against Poland that can be used against Poland to stop EU funds. As I said, I'm really critical to the current conditionality mechanism. The first version presented by the Commission was much more brave. It was easier for the Commission to prove the link, to prove that the problems in one member state can have impact on spending EU funds. However, this version now in force, as I said, it's practically impossible to be applied against Poland. It is very easy to be applied against Hungary, for example, but not against Poland, with its own problems with attacks on the judiciary. I think there are two mechanisms that can be concerned. The first, they both concern judicial activities. The history has proven the last year, since 2016, 2017, when the Commission started first proceedings against Poland, that despite the fact that government says it will not comply with judgments of the Court of Justice, it ultimately complies with them. So bringing the government to the Court of Justice with speedy proceedings, with interim measures applied in the meantime to stop spreading this disease, to me is the most effective tool. However, the Commission, the new Commission, is not as effective as the previous one when Franz Timmermans was in charge of the rule of law issues. Now the European Commission, especially the president of the Commission, says we need more dialogue with Polish government. We need to respect themselves. We need to not to bring more cases because this is not the way we should solve the problems in Poland. When you compare it to the previous Commission and especially the Franz Timmermans initiatives, he was given a green light to bring Poland immediately to the court and to solve many issues. In this way, the Timmermans, or so broadly speaking, the Commission has stopped the early retirement of about 30% of judges in the Supreme Court. So this was a huge victory for the rule of law, independence of the judiciary. So I will say eventually the most effective tools at the European level are infringement proceedings. By the way, this is not only the Commission that can bring Poland to the the Court of Justice. Also, other member states are allowed to do so. As I described, Czech Republic brought Poland in case concerning the environment, the threats to environment. Hungary brought Slovakia a few years ago when Slovakia refused to allow for Viktor Orban to be on Slovakian soil. There was a case Austria against Germany in the Court of Justice concerning some transportation issues, as I remember. So it is a mechanism presented in the treaties. It should be fully applied. There were attempts in the Netherlands, but also in Denmark, by the members of the parliament. They asked the government whether it is possible to bring Poland to the Court of Justice without waiting for the Commission, because the situation is so severe in my country that it requires some special tools, such as the case one country against the second country. It is still being discussed in those parliaments, but I think the best way would be to form some kind of a coalition of friends of the rule of law. There are many countries which are very vocal in the European level when they say about when they refer to Poland, such as Scandinavian countries, Ireland, Luxembourg, the Netherlands as well, Denmark. So the most I am aware that this is diplomatically problematic, that one country brings another to an international court. But I think when the best way, and this is also endorsed by academics, would be to form a coalition of European Union countries and bring together Poland to the Court of Justice in those issues which I have described. Thank you.
Now we are coming to our final 20 minutes of the evening with you, Patrick, and your expertism on the part of Poland. Our round course is going to conclude, and I have some questions, but at first I would like to make a little short statement. We all know that Poland had quite a history of sufferment, had to suffer a bunch in the 20th century because of world wars and what Germany did to Poland, what Soviet Union did to Poland. We had all the stuff in the 18th century with what the Prussians did on Poland. So at the end, the Polish population had to suffer almost the most in the 20th century in the Cold War. We had Solidarność in the beginning of the 80s. We had Pope John Paul II, who get in combat with communism out of his office in Rome. And today, everybody is a little bit surprised because Poland had to be really happy to be in the EU, in NATO, being part of the Western world. And at the end, they are challenging everything that is part of the EU now. That's what you see outside of Poland in the reactions of our people. And so Anonymous asked here what could be a future position of Poland in the EU. We talked about cutting the money transfer to Poland. And another question of perhaps the same Anonymous, he asked what is the think, or what do the population of Poland thinks about all that, and what do they see as a possibility of future integration into the European Union. So you see what I want to talk about now. What's your point of view of all that? What's going on there? because we know we had also the discussions and the demonstrations because of abortion and all that. And what's going on in Polish society right now?
So thank you for those questions. Polish society is really supportive to European integration, I must say. When you look at the statistics, when you look at the polls, there is something like 85–90% in favor of European integration. One of the highest in the European Union, I must say. So this is not a problem that the society is not supportive for the European Union. It is. However, I think this is not the main topic in the agenda right now. We know that this is really a fundamental issue, but if you look at the surveys, you will see that the main problem for, so to speak, average Polish citizen from the political point of view is the healthcare, is the possibility to obtain a cheap flat, for example, and whether they can have enough resources for having children, for example. The questions concerning the rule of law is usually the 7th, the 8th question, the issue on the agenda. So this is not so important for many Polish people. However, Poland is one of the biggest countries in the European Union in terms of territory and population as well. After the Brexit, it has even more importance within the European Union. But at the same time, Poland, because of their government, is becoming much more weak when it comes to forming coalitions within the European Union, discussing presenting new ideas in the European Forum. We can see, for example, that when the recent budget was discussed in the European Council, only Poland and Hungary decided to announce some unilateral declarations that, well, they do not support EU the conditionality mechanism, but in order for the European Union to properly function, they decide for the new budget and for this regulation. And we can see in a practical terms that Poland is becoming weak within the European Union. We have the president of the European Council, Donald Tusk. Previously, Poland, a Polish citizen, was a president of the European Parliament, the former Prime Minister Jerzy Buzek. We were able to. We had in the Commission, we had one of the best portfolios concerning budget, infrastructure, concerning finance, and so on, which are very, very crucial. And now Poland is Polish position is really weak. Have a look at the re-election of Donald Tusk as the president of the European Council. Even Orban has supported Donald Tusk for the second term, but the Polish government has not. So this is something I can't understand why you do not support your fellow citizen in European institutions. So should the Polish government continue its operation against the the rule of law? Should it continue undermining the independence of the judiciary? I must say that this will be much more weaker in terms of their negotiation position in the European Union. This is what I can only say.
So thank you very much for your answers to that questions and to my thinking about the historics. Talking about security, it's also so that NATO is one big part of Polish foreign affairs, because we had good talkings about with Donald Trump, and he thought about to station more soldiers of his army, of the US Army in Poland. You are on the east side of the European Union, so you know what's going on with Latvia and co in the ongoings to Russia. And on the other side, you have a border to the wonderful Belarus, and to the Ukraine. So you are, like Prussia used to be once in a while, and the first German Reich, being, on the outer boundings of that. So there should be something like, we need to be in the western part because we need them to secure our borders, and being part of NATO. So what's the thinking about that in the Polish regions? Because it's the East who's really voting conservative. It's not big cities. It's mostly always the East. We saw that on the landscape, on the map of Poland on the election days for presidency.
Yes, many commentators usually say after elections, when they see those maps, they say, oh, we can see the partitions of 19th or 18th century. When it was still a part of Russia and Prussia and Austria and so on. And of course, there are cultural differences between Western and Eastern Poland. Eastern Poland is much more. I come from Eastern Poland, and this is a much more conservative part. There is a huge influence of the church, for example, in these regions. Mainly the east and the south of Poland, but nevertheless, the support for the European Union is quite unique across Poland. For example, many farmers from the east, because the eastern part is much more devoted to agriculture. Because having really significant subsidies from EU budget, they do support the European Union. So this is one way. Secondly, I think that the government openly declares that it wants to be in the west part of the civilization, so to say, so to speak. They want to have close connection with NATO, with the European Union as well, with other Western organizations. However, they have changed the priorities. This is not the European Union that is or used to be the first partner for Poland, but it is rather the United States that is that should be the main partner when it comes to Polish foreign policy. When Donald Trump was the president of the United States, the Polish government has put virtually all resources in maintaining this close contact with Trump administration, and try to reorient their priorities, claiming that European Union, okay, this is fine, but we must stick to the United States and its policies. However, after Trump lost, the Polish administration, the Polish government has virtually problems with reaching Biden and reaching his administration because they previously, during Trump's term, they presented so much not American but Trump-oriented politics that now it is very difficult to rebuild a good relationship with Biden administration. We will see how this relationship will work. But well, until now, there was almost no contact between American and Polish officials under Biden administration. But at the same time, the American administration is presenting many statements about Poland and the situation concerning the rule of law, democracy, freedom of the press, and so on, as it was presented in the introductory statement. So this is...
When you're talking about free press, we had a question from Martina Bremsik again, who were talking about the free press, that there would be a need for free press in Poland to ensure fair reporting, so that legal moves from the EU can reach the Polish public. And you were talking about the press before, and we had that in Professor Grind's introduction, that he talked about selling of the Passau publisher to a semi-state government-based Polish institution. So how do you see that point of free press attacked in Poland?
Well, the current government has always was always really hostile against private media. Especially, they were claiming that some media, because they are owned by foreign companies, that means that the owners are influencing the journalists to attack the Polish government, and so on and so forth, claiming that, for example, the biggest website in Poland, Onet, which used to be German-owned, that it continues a German anti-Polish line of journalism. Similarly, and strikingly, I must say, for example, the biggest Polish private television, which is TVN, is now owned by Discovery from the United States, and also the Polish government and many Polish prominent member of the ruling party, they claim that, well, this is really anti-Polish. They do not support the government, and they try to undermine the reforms made by the government, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, there is we have also public media, public television, public radio. And one of the first moves after the Law and Justice went to power in 2015 was the change of legislation concerning public media. It is not an independent regulatory body that appoints the head of the Polish public television or Polish public radio, but a new national broadcasting council that consists of Law and Justice politics, that decides who should be the head of the Polish television. And the current head of Polish public television is a former member of the Law and Justice Party and a member of the Parliament and European Parliament. So this is quite significant. Secondly, there are attempts. The Law and Justice was is constantly claiming that they want to, as it was said, re-Polonize Poland. So to bring something which is in foreign hands back to Polish people, something that operates in Poland and is not owned by Polish citizens, to bring them back to Poland. And when it comes to press, there was an attempt that Polish state-funded company Orlen has bought hundreds of local media outlets, but at the same time, recently the Law and Justice decided to present a new proposal to change the legislation concerning broadcasting, and now it is at the very early stage of lawmaking process, but now it will not be a company which is even indirectly owned by other company from outside the European Union, will not be allowed to reach the license for broadcasting, television and radio. And this is the example of the TVN station, which is owned by Discovery. So there are recently the European Commission as well, the ambassador, American ambassador have issued their statements claiming that, well, this is an issue of freedom of press and so on. But so we will see in the coming days what will be the outcome of this proposal.
In spite of one of our users who wants to go deeper into the part with the US and what's their role, we are not going to discuss this anymore because we are almost at the end. But I promised almost half an hour ago in the F&A module, Julian Köck, to answer his question. I think it's a good question at the end of our discussion. He asks about, is it thinkable that the developments in Hungary and Poland will be used as a playbook for how to ignore the EU and still took its benefits? Or are the political and juristical situations too unique?
This is really a good question, good hypothesis. We must bear in mind that situation in Poland and Hungary is not the very same. In Hungary, Orban has a constitutional majority. He is allowed to change the constitution. In Poland, Law and Justice is not. But anyway, it turned off the effective constitutional review. So this is the main difference. But there are clear patterns between in Poland, in Polish and Hungarian behavior. Many legislative proposals presented by the Polish government, they resemble the Hungarian ones. Recently, the Minister of Justice has presented a proposal for more transparent public spending of non-governmental organizations, the so-called Lex NGO, which is the very copy of the legislation enforced in Hungary, which was challenged by the European Commission before the Court of Justice. There are other pieces of legislation, such as let me think for a moment, such as the first attempt to get rid of judges from the Polish Supreme Court when the ruling majority used the idea of lowering their retirement age. So almost one third of judges of the Supreme Court were affected by new lower retirement age, and this is clearly the solution that was used in Hungary to get rid of some judges in their Supreme Court. So yes, there are some patterns, but this is not a whole blueprint. I must say, Law and Justice generally tries to mimic the behavior of Orban administration or Orban's majority in Hungary, there is no own invention, I must say, in what the law and justice government is doing. So this is rather, I think I'd rather look at Hungary, and because they have become an illiberal state before. Firstly, they have prepared some patterns of activities, how to receive this goal, how to reach this goal, and so on. But so I think this is in Poland. You cannot find. I can't find any purely Polish solution. I rather look at Hungary and what the Hungarian government is doing, rather than thinking that Polish government invents some tools to undermine the rule of law.
So, Patrick, thank you very, very much for your expertise tonight and your marvelous answering of all the questions we had at our last session here today on the Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche. Thank you very much. And as I promised, I'm going to turn now to German und möchte hiermit allen Damen und Herren, die heute Abend wieder dabei waren, herzlich danken, dass Sie die Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche mit Ihren Fragen bereichert haben. Ich darf festhalten, dass wir heute Abend leider schon wieder am Ende unserer Reihe für 2021 sind. Die liberale Weltordnung in der Krise, Fragezeichen, das war das, wie wir uns der ganzen Sache hingegeben haben. Wir haben die verschiedensten Bereiche beleuchtet, sind einmal rund um den Globus gejettet und haben dort über die Fragen miteinander diskutiert. Es hat mir dieses Jahr sehr, sehr viel Freude bereitet. Im vergangenen Jahr mussten wir das ja auch schon online durchführen. Aber ich denke, online hat den großen Vorteil, dass jeder spontan dazukommen kann und manchmal auch Überraschungsgäste dabei waren. Wir hatten sehr viele hochrangige Vertreter dieses Jahr dabei, auch mit Dr. Röttgen ganz zu Beginn als Vorsitzender des Auswärtigen Ausschusses oder auch als Zuhörern auch Leuten wie unserem ehemaligen bayerischen Ministerpräsidenten Dr. Beckstein, aber auch viele aus den Bereichen der Unterstützer der Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche. Ich danke dem Trägerkreis, dass Sie das erneut alle mit unterstützt haben, dass wir gemeinsam Werbung für unsere Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche gemacht haben. Und ich möchte an dieser Stelle auch ganz besonders den ganzen vielen Helfern im Hintergrund danken, sei es aus meinem Büro, sei es die Leute, die hinter der Stiftung stehen, auch Sebastian Zajons und sein Team, die uns die ganze Zeit hervorragend begleitet haben. Ganz wichtig für Sie alle, überhaupt nicht klar und offensichtlich der technische Support im Hintergrund, der durch Universum herbeigeführt wird, die das ganz hervorragend im Griff gehalten hatten. Wir hatten heuer eigentlich überhaupt keine technischen Probleme, die von uns intern gestammt wären. Ich danke den heute Abend zum ersten Mal eingesetzten Translatoren, also den Dolmetscherinnen, die uns heute Abend so wunderbar durch den Abend geführt haben. Ihnen allen herzlichen Dank dafür, dass Sie es möglich gemacht haben. 2022 wird es mit Sicherheit eine Fortführung der Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche, Nürnberger Sicherheitstagung geben. Und ich hoffe und bete, dass wir uns alle gesund und munter im kommenden Jahr wiedersehen können. Ich danke Professor Grein, der jeden Abend mit mir gemeinsam gestaltet hat und jeden Abend die Einführung gemacht hat, recht herzlich, und allen wirklich hochkarätigen Referentinnen und Referenten der Nürnberger Sicherheitsgespräche heuer. Es war einfach alles eine runde Sache. Ich hoffe, Sie sehen das alle genauso wie ich. Und ich freue mich, wie gesagt, Sie im kommenden Jahr wieder bei uns begrüßen zu dürfen. Sollten Fragen offen geblieben sein, ist es Ihnen jederzeit freigestellt, entsprechend Ihre Fragen zum Beispiel an mein Büro und ulrich.lechter@bundestag.de zu schicken oder aber an die Thomas-Dehler-Stiftung oder an die Friedrich-Naumann-Stiftung für die Freiheit. Wir werden dann versuchen, Fragen noch zu beantworten. Ich denke, wir sind dieses Jahr sehr rund durch die Geschichte durchgekommen. Vielen herzlichen Dank Ihnen allen. Bis 2022. Bleiben Sie gesund. Ihr Ulrich Lechter.